Summary of the Blithedale Romance by Nathaniel Hawthorne. In the middle of the 19th century, Miles Coverdale is about to leave his comfortable bachelor pad in Boston to start a new life and help start a new town called Blithedale. There will be a lot of young, well-known thinkers there at the same time, which will make it a hot topic in the papers. On the night before he leaves, Coverdale goes to see an exhibit of the Veiled Lady, which at the time was a famous attraction in Boston. Coverdale asked the Veiled Lady about the future of the project at Blithedale at the show. As he walks home, he thinks about her vague comments. An old man called Moody stops him and says he has a favor to ask, but he quickly changes his mind and says he'd rather ask a woman or an older man. Coverdale is puzzled, but he suggests that Moody talk to Hollingsworth, who is about to move to Blithedale and is a bit older than Moody. Moody thanks him, and they go their separate ways. The next day, Coverdale leaves his flat and walks to Blithedale with 4 other guys in a snowstorm. By the time they get to the Blithedale farmhouse, Coverdale is sure he has a cold. Still, he can't wait to meet Mrs. Foster, whose husband is going to teach him and the other guys how to work on the farm. Coverdale talks with some of the other newcomers to Blithedale until Zenobia comes in to meet them. Zenobia is a beautiful writer and social reformer who is known for fighting for women's rights. Coverdale is drawn to Zenobia right away by her beauty and wit. He likes the only thing she has on her, which is an unusual hothouse flower in her hair. Until dinner, the group talks about their project. After dinner, Zenobia says that it's strange that Hollingsworth is always late. He knocks on the door at that moment. Coverdale lets him in, and Hollingsworth surprises everyone by bringing in a pale young teen girl who is drawn to Zenobia right away. The girl says her name is Priscilla, but she won't say what her last name is. Coverdale thinks that Priscilla loves Zenobia because she has read her stories. He tells Zenobia about this idea, but she laughs at him and says that Priscilla is just a worried seamstress who has lived her whole life in a hot, dirty room in the city. The boss of the farm, Silas Foster, tells everyone to go to bed because they have to get up early. As Coverdale said he would, he wakes up the next morning with a painful fever and a bad cold. He can't get out of bed. Coverdale asks Hollingsworth to take him back to the city because he thinks he is dying, but Hollingsworth says no. Hollingsworth takes care of Coverdale instead, day and night, while he is sick. Coverdale understands this, but he also knows that Hollingsworth is obsessed with his charitable goal of criminal reform. He wants to build a place where he can change criminals by appealing to their hidden intellectual and spiritual feelings. Coverdale thinks about Zenobia's sexual past a lot because she acts more like a young wife than a virgin. He is sure that Zenobia has been married, even though there is no proof of this, and he feels bad that he has thought about it so much. Coverdale's first day out of bed after being sick, he finds Zenobia putting flowers and buds on Priscilla's sticks. Since she moved to Blithedale, Priscilla has become much more beautiful and lively. Coverdale also feels like a new person, and he is eager to get to work. He soon finds out, though, that his early ideas about how physical work and mental activity are linked were wrong. Coverdale is too tired to work on his poems because his job doesn't make him happy or give him ideas. Zenobia makes fun of him for wanting to be a farmer in the future, but Hollingsworth says Coverdale hasn't been able to write poems because he's not a real poet. Hollingsworth, on the other hand, still thinks of himself as a giver because that's just how he is. Zenobia says nice things about Hollingsworth, which makes Coverdale wonder if she and Priscilla, who hang out with Hollingsworth a lot, are trying to convert him. Coverdale starts to care too much about Zenobia, Hollingsworth, and Priscilla. Even though Coverdale doesn't think Hollingsworth can feel human emotions because he's so focused on helping people, both Zenobia and Priscilla are head over heels for him. Coverdale is worried that Priscilla will give Hollingsworth her heart and be heartbroken when she realizes that Hollingsworth can't love her the way she loves him. Zenobia is in a similar situation, but Coverdale doesn't worry as much about her because she is so smart and strong. One night, Coverdale sees Priscilla sitting happily at Hollingsworth's feet on the porch until Zenobia comes. Zenobia calls Priscilla over and tells her that she needs to teach Priscilla how to act properly. Coverdale is worried about what will happen to them all. One day, Moody comes up to Coverdale and Hollingsworth and asks about Priscilla. Coverdale realizes that Moody was the one who sent Priscilla to Blithedale. They tell Moody that Priscilla has grown up to be very pretty and happy, which makes Moody happy. Moody also wants to know about Zenobia and if she is nice to Priscilla. Coverdale doesn't know why Moody would ask such a weird question, but they tell him that the two are like sisters. Hollingsworth and Moody go to find Priscilla, but Coverdale later sees Moody standing outside the barn and looking up at Priscilla's window. Zenobia and Priscilla walk up to the window, but Zenobia gets tired of waiting and pushes Priscilla away. As Moody walks away, Coverdale sees him shake his fist. A short time later, Coverdale meets a mysterious guy named Professor Westervelt in the forest. Coverdale doesn't like him from the start, but he still tells Westervelt where Zenobia might be. Coverdale hears Westervelt and Zenobia talking later, but he doesn't understand everything they say. Westervelt tells Zenobia something that makes her feel sick, and she tells him that if God cares about her, he'll free her from this bond. The next night, Zenobia tells the group a story about the mysterious veiled lady, who disappeared at the height of her fame. A young man named Theodore bet that he could find out who the veiled lady really was, so he snuck into her drawing room to spy on her. But when the lady walked into the room, she could feel Theodore there and called him over. He took her covering off, but before he could see her face, she was gone. At the same time that the veiled lady went away, a young girl showed up among a group of prophets and fell in love with one of them right away. The wizard who showed off the veiled lady found out about this somehow, found the woman, and got her to help him catch the girl, who turned out to be the veiled lady. For the woman to catch the girl, she must throw the veil back over her head and say some magic words. She agreed, and the magician was able to catch the veiled lady again. As Zenobia tells Priscilla how the story ends, she hides her face with a veil. This makes Priscilla very scared. Not long after this happens, Coverdale, Hollingsworth, Priscilla, and Zenobia go to Eliot's pulpit, a strange rock creation, to relax. Zenobia starts a discussion about women's rights while they are there. She thinks that one day women will get the same rights as men and show that they are smarter and more articulate than men. Coverdale says that he wants women could rule and be in charge of religions. Hollingsworth, on the other hand, thinks that a woman should be at a man's side. Any woman who tries to go beyond that is a monster, and if too many women rise up to demand social change in their favor, Hollingsworth says he would use force to push them back into their sphere. Coverdale is shocked and thinks that Zenobia will fight, but she doesn't. Instead, she tells Hollingsworth through tears that if men are good and manly, women will be what he says they should be. A few days later, Hollingsworth tries to get Coverdale to help him start a center for helping criminals in Blithedale, but Coverdale says no. After they fight, Coverdale chooses to leave. When Coverdale goes back to Boston, he stays in a dirty hotel far from the places he used to go. The day after he gets there, he sees that Zenobia, Westervelt, and Priscilla are staying in the boarding house across from his hotel. Westervelt and Zenobia see Coverdale watching them from outside their window, so they pull down the curtain. The next day, Coverdale goes over to see them, but Zenobia is upset that Coverdale is being so nosy. Westervelt walks into the room and tells everyone that they have to leave. Coverdale asks Priscilla quickly if she chose to be there, and she tells him she doesn't have a choice as she walks away. Coverdale goes to find Moody to ask him about Priscilla and Zenobia. He finds out that they are half-sisters. Zenobia is Moody's daughter from his first marriage, and Priscilla is from his second. Zenobia was raised by a rich uncle, but Moody was in charge of Priscilla, who became known for being able to see into the future. Before going to Blithedale, a magician started coming to visit Priscilla, but no one knew why, since Priscilla was so normal. Priscilla reportedly went to Blithedale to meet Zenobia, who didn't know she had a half-sister. After hearing that the lady has come back, Coverdale goes to the Veiled Lady show. There, he runs into Hollingsworth, but Hollingsworth is still mad at Coverdale, so they don't talk. Shortly after Westervelt starts the show, Hollingsworth walks out on stage and says, Come. Priscilla pulls off the cover and follows Hollingsworth out of the room. Coverdale chooses to go back to Blithedale because he wants to know what has happened between Zenobia, Priscilla, and Hollingsworth since he left. He finds the three of them at Eliot's pulpit, and it's clear that they're in trouble. Zenobia tells Hollingsworth that she is on trial for her life and tells him to stop being so self-centered. Coverdale thinks they've been talking about Zenobia's past, but they don't bring it up again. Hollingsworth tells Zenobia that he loves Priscilla now when she asks him if he does. He takes Priscilla along with him. Zenobia is heartbroken, and she tells Coverdale that she has to leave Blithedale. She tells him she'll be fine, but then she takes off her flower and tells him to tell Hollingsworth that he killed her. Coverdale falls asleep in the forest after she goes. He has a bad feeling about Zenobia when he wakes up, so he goes to get Hollingsworth and Silas. Coverdale shows them Zenobia's towel and shows them where he found it near the pond. After a while of fishing in the water, the guys find Zenobia's body at the bottom of the pond. They have a funeral and Westervelt goes to it. Coverdale tries to get him to say what he knows about Zenobia, but Westervelt says it doesn't matter anymore. A few years later, Coverdale gives in to his interest and goes looking for Priscilla and Hollingsworth, who are now married. Hollingsworth gave up on his plans to change the way criminals were treated because he felt bad about how he treated Zenobia. Coverdale tells him he's sorry and tells him he'll never see him or the other man again. Coverdale is sad that Blithedale didn't work out as planned. He knows that all the founding members have left, but he doesn't know if anyone else who joined later is still there. Coverdale's own life hasn't been very interesting or full of people. He decides to tell a secret he's kept hidden throughout his story: he loved Priscilla. This might explain why he was so obsessed with her.
About the author. Nathaniel and Elizabeth Hawthorne had Nathaniel Hawthorne in Salem, Massachusetts, on July 4, 1804. Even though the family wasn't rich, Nathaniel Sr.'s job as a shipman kept them alive financially until he died in 1808. Elizabeth took Hawthorne and his siblings to live with her brother in Salem. They stayed there until 1816, when they moved to Raymond, Maine. Hawthorne moved back to Salem in 1819 so he could go to school there. In 1821, he went to Bowdoin College. Hawthorne didn't stand out as a student, but he did finish school in 1825 and start working on his writing job. Even though Hawthorne's early short stories and other works didn't bring him much fame, he kept trying while he worked other jobs, including one in the Boston Custom House in 1839. After meeting Sophia Peabody and falling in love with her, Hawthorne moved to Brook Farm, a place that tried to be a utopia, so he could save money to marry her. He left after less than a year, though. Hawthorne and Sophia got married in 1842. Between 1844 and 1851, they had 3 children: Una, Julian, and Rose. Between when they got married and when they moved to the Berkshires in 1850, the Hawthornes moved several times. Even though Hawthorne didn't like living in such a cold place, he wrote and released some of his best-known works there, such as The House of the Seven Gables and the Blithedale Romance. Hawthorne left the Berkshires in 1851, and in 1853, he went to Liverpool, England, where he became the U.S. consul. Hawthorne didn't write anything during this time, but when he came back to the U.S. in 1860, he started publishing again, starting with The Marble Fawn. The family moved to Concord, Massachusetts, but Hawthorne started getting old and started having strange stomach aches. Hawthorne chose to travel in New England because he thought he just needed some fresh mountain air to feel better. While he was away, he died in his sleep in Plymouth, New Hampshire, on May 19, 1864. Hawthorne was buried in Concord, Massachusetts, at the famous Author's Ridge in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.